set myself over here so I can take notes. Welcome to join me here in the corner. Yeah, it's not a bad idea. Those guys? Here, why don't we move this one? Then we'll have safe. Let's close this door.
Hi. Okay, we can hear. Good. I thought we were going to be yelling at each other for the next couple of hours. But on behalf of the Senate, we are really delighted that so many people understand the importance of coming and helping us do the job that we are doing on your behalf. We like to believe that we are miracle workers. However, you know, there are always the realities, but we are better equipped to go in and fight if we know what it is you are thinking about and how we can help improve the lives of our communities, you know, throughout the state, certainly in Westchester County. So I'm not going to take a lot of time. I'll give it to Shelley, and then I know Alessandra is here, so we'll all say hello, and then you get to talk to us.
Thank you all for being here. I know we have so many people. I want to say a few ground rules and a few changes in ground rules because we have so many people. Please be patient with us. One, we ask for 4 minutes. We're trying to ask you to go to 3 minutes. There's a lot of people. We want as many people to have an opportunity as possible. The library closes at, I believe, 5:30. If by chance we don't get to you, please submit your comments in email to us at our email addresses, which are on the program. We very much want to have your input, so I apologize for that. Secondly, it was first come, first serve. I may take a little pride Reckless of Paul Feiner, Vice Karen Greenberg, Jacob Reckless for religious reasons, and Catherine Crossling for family emergency. And I apologize to others who might have thought they were on the front list, but then we're going to go to Joe Mayhew and Karen Blumenthal, then Warren Rosenberg, William Paulette, Leah Ocken, Susan Abbott, and then we'll go from there. We'll try to keep you.
Why did those people get to go first?
There were 3 elected officials.
Why should they go before the citizens, Shelley? Why?
I understand you don't like it, but they also have to go back and do a...
Everybody else has to go back to work too. They should not go first.
I'm not going to argue about it. We're going to do it as a courtesy, and then we will go quickly to everyone. The point is for you to get your voice heard. And now I'm going to turn it over to my friend, Senator Alessandra Biaggi.
Thank you, Shelley. I'm going to be quick, 20 seconds, 15 seconds. My name is Alessandra Biaggi. I am a state senator. I'm very happy to be here. This is my first forum, listening to all of these issues and have been to other businesses. An incredible turnout. We should all be very excited to be in this room. We're here to listen. I represent Westchester County as well as the Bronx. Pelham and Mount Vernon are in my district, so I'm looking forward to hearing issues on that, as well as Riverdale and all the way down to Hunts Point. Thank you very much for being here. I'm very much looking forward to listening to what you have to say and fighting for the things that you want.
This mic should work, and we're going to give you a 3-minute warning. Sergio,
So we're working.
where's our timekeeper?
Okay.
Okay. Come on, come over here. Okay, go ahead.
First, I want to thank you for holding this forum and for the terrific work that you already have done in the state senate. I'm Chris Burdick. I'm the supervisor of the town of Bedford, and for those of you who don't know what a supervisor is, that's kind of like a mayor. And so I'm here on 2 issues that I think one is, I think, important to a lot of municipalities in Westchester County, and the second is specific to the town of Bedford. There are 2 resolutions that I have given to you that were unanimously adopted on Tuesday night by bipartisan town board. And first calls for restoration of aid and incentives to municipalities for the town. It also calls for increased funding for the Consolidated Local Street and Highway Improvement Program, known as CHIPS, and which is really New York State funding for local road projects, and also to retain funding for the local paving and extreme winter recovery programs. You know, our roads have gotten beaten up terribly over the years. The state funding levels, both for state roads as well as local roads, is at very low levels, and this is more critical than ever. And the aid funds also more critical than ever as we are struggling in order to meet the needs of our communities. So I would ask that the state senate work with the governor's office to try to restore that funding where it has been proposed to be eliminated for the town of Bedford. That would be a loss of some almost nearly $80,000, and that's a big blow to our town. The second resolution that you have in front of you is calling for funding for the concrete portion of I-684, which runs through Bedford. Now, believe it or not, that is the only section of I-684 that has not been repaved. And that road was built in the late 1960s, so yes, it's been 50 years since that section of road has not been paved. It's in deplorable condition, it's dangerous. This is not just a matter for the folks who live in Bedford, but for the millions of motorists that take their lives into their own hands by driving over it. So I am imploring the state senate to do what you can to try to put funding in the state budget to make sure that that work is done. We've been asking for it for 20 years, literally 20 years, to try to get that funding. And again, I thank you very much for making this time available.
because this is your budget. It's not our budget, it's not the governor's budget, it's your budget. Thank you.
Dr. Cousins? You're down to 3 minutes.
My name is Edward Clushes. I'm the superintendent of the Westchester Union Free School District. Our board president, Carlucci, will make our statement.
Thank you for providing this opportunity today to make a statement on behalf of the children in our care. We also thank you for the support you have provided our district during the years of financial challenges since 2008. Infused in our district vision are the high expectations we hold for every child. We strive to prepare our students to be college and career ready, while sufficiently well-balanced and academically prepared to choose their own future. That is, with a full complement of options provided through high-quality courses, athletics, the arts, clubs, extracurricular, and community service offerings, plus equipped with excellent international baccalaureate, advanced placement, scholastic aptitude test, and American college test scores. Our students will have multiple choices as they approach high school graduation. We believe that our society needs passionate, ethical leaders in every field of endeavor, including Wall Street bankers, entrepreneurs, philosophers, artists, researchers, engineers, medical practitioners, attorneys, and politicians, just to name a few. With a quality and diverse education, our young people can decide their futures, whether it is to pursue a trade, university training, start a business, join the military, or any other options they desire. We are proud of our school district. Our young people continue to meet and exceed our highest expectations. According to a U.S. News and World Report in 2018, Portchester High School is identified as a, quote, top-performing high school from among 20,500, earning a silver ranking among 1,481 nationwide and 134 statewide. In 2018, we were cited by the College Board as among only 373 school districts in the U.S. and Canada that simultaneously achieved increases in access to advanced placement courses for a broader number of students, and also maintained or improved the rate at which our AP students earn scores of 3 or higher on an AP exam. Portchester is among only 11% of the 373 schools at or above a 30% poverty rate, and among 14% with a 30% or greater enrollment of minority subgroups. Only 9% of schools on the list met both criteria. We'll focus today on foundation aid because we believe that with appropriate financial resources, we can best meet the many challenges set before us now and in future years. We call upon you today to establish the means to provide equitable foundation aid funding to our schools in the Portchester-Rye Union Free School District. Portchester and Westbury are the two most underfunded high-needs districts in the state. Both are funded at less than 50% of their foundation aid, while there are financially secure districts funded ranging up to 1,988%. The state average for foundation aid funding is 80%. In our submission and for your review today, we include the 2019-20 statewide data of foundation aid distribution. This data is from Questar BOCES State Aid Planning. We have already submitted this data electronically to Senator Mayor's office.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sorry.
Just a lot of you. A lot of people will be really angry if everybody doesn't get it yet. So.
Paul Feiner.
Thank you. I'll try being very brief. First of all, thank you very much for having this hearing, and my comments are about the state roads. The New York State-owned roads are in horrible condition. This is a picture of the road that was a New York State-owned road that was taken yesterday. Big pothole over here. This is Dobbs Ferry Road. Another state road over here, also taken yesterday. The third one. You know, New York State is just not maintaining the roads that they own. And I'm not here to ask for more funding for the town, or for cities, or for villages. I'm saying maintain the roads that are owned by New York State. Now, I yesterday I drove on Dobbs Ferry Road, and I saw cars not only trying to get around this pothole, but going on the wrong side of the street. So it's really dangerous. This is life-threatening for some people. If you're a motorcyclist, and in the middle of the night, you're driving, and you go over a pothole, you're gonna fall off, and you could die. And so the last time a road in Greenberg was repaved was 4 years ago. And that's really unconscionable. So I'm basically asking New York State to include money in the state budget for funding for roads, and I'll give you these pictures. And I should also mention that the state employees who work with DOT do a great job. They're very dedicated, they're very hardworking, but they just don't have the resources. They don't have the staff, and if they don't have the funding, they're not able to to respond. But they do try. And the only other thing I wanted to mention is we have a group in Greenberg. We're trying to make assisted living more affordable. Right now, if you have an elderly family member, it costs anywhere from $8,000 to over $20,000 a month to stay in assisted living. The average person can't afford that. And I think that the state Senate and the legislature should address this problem and try coming up with recommendations that will hopefully make affordable assisted living opportunities for residents. So thank you.
We've been joined by Senator David Carlucci. We're moving right along. Everyone is being rushed by me. Next is Jacob Reckless.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, Majority Leader and Senators. My name is Jacob Reckless. I want to thank you for hosting the forum and for allowing me the opportunity to speak. I speak here today as a member of the Board of Directors of the Empire State Association of Assisted Living, so I appreciate that lead up. And I speak here about affordable assisted living and housing options and ensuring that we have the right funding available. Just as reference, there are 27,000 members represented by our organization statewide. The infographics that I handed out to you show the number of SSI residents that are in each of your districts. There's over 1,500 residents in your districts collectively, hundreds of staff that are being supported by this population. It's a complicated topic, but to put it simply, New York State does have a funding mechanism if you don't have $8,000 to $20,000 a month to pay, and it is a major real issue. The funding mechanism is called SSI. It's a combination of Social Security and state supplemental security. The challenge is that it has been 12 years since there's been an increase in SSI. And I want to thank you because the Senate last year did stand up and put in the one house an increase. The Assembly put an increase. I think there's a recognition that this is a problem. The governor vetoed it. The Senate and Assembly then put a separate piece of legislation to put an increase. The governor vetoed it, saying that it should be part of the budget process. And this year, there was no increase in the governor's budget. I want to read you one thing. This is an anecdote that happened yesterday. I just adopted a dog a couple weeks ago. And I called to have him placed in a shelter in Westchester. To have him housed, and by the way, they asked all these questions. He is neutered, he is well cared for, gets along with other dogs, so those make the prices apparently better. And it's $45 to $95 a day for care to stay overnight. And we are putting $41 a day for our seniors and disabled adults. And so I just want to ask you to please continue to fight and figure out a way to get the message across.
Crossling, and then Supervisor Nancy Selvison, and we'll resume with the list.
All right, I'm Catherine Crossling. I'm from the Austin Board of Education. I wanted to thank you for letting me jump the line, and I will email you my remarks. My child has an accident at school, so I'm gonna go and take care of that as soon as I say my words here. In 2008, that's the year New York State froze foundation aid, and Austining schools at that point in time had enrolled 3,800 students. Today, Austining has 1,000 more students, a number that is itself larger than many other school districts in their entirety. The census year of our current foundation aid, in that year, Austining had 22% students living in poverty. Today, our poverty rate is 58%. Austining has a very different story of its students from 18 years ago when that foundation aid formula was put together, or based on the data that that foundation aid formula uses. And despite years of making painful cuts in the classrooms, packing buses 3 students to a seat while eliminating bus monitors, pulling financial rabbits out of hats, working with teachers to find significant cost savings in their benefits, our foundation aid now is only at 41%. Austining faces a $4.5 million budget deficit, and Governor Cuomo's proposed budget is nothing short of a disaster for Austining. It increases foundation aid by less than $90,000. That is $18 a student. And it nowhere near covers the costs of year-to-year enrollment changes, much less than the perfect storm we are facing now. Of the past 10 years, we are still struggling to weather. The decade of harm felt in Austining is real. Our graduation rates continue to fall. They're at 72%. The academic support programs we had to cut in just 1 year drove our ELA scores from 10% above the state average to 10% below. The political nature of not allowing the foundation aid formula to run has exacerbated inequity. A district on Long Island with half the students in need, yet double the wealth of Austining, receives twice the foundation aid per pupil at $4,400 a student. Austining receives $2,300. We have neighbors with a combined wealth ratio that is 5 times Austining's that are getting more money per student. So much time has passed where money has not been allowed to follow enrollments, and research shows that districts with declining enrollments are doing better. More than ever, we need the dedicated legislators of our region to fight for Austining and the harmed suburban 6 other districts similar to us, such as Portchester. We know your battle will be formidable. Prepare yourself for Albany's rhetoric. When the governor tells you, I don't like foundation aid, it's a ghost of the past, we want you to say, but what about the harmed suburban 6? When you hear we want to address the formula, but it will take an enormous amount of time, you should know that we are out of time. What about the harmed suburban 6? It will be easy to come back and tell us that you couldn't do it for us this year, but maybe next year. We've heard that before. This is our year. Please, please hear our pleas. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Majority Leader and Senators. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. I am here in my official capacity as the President of the Westchester Municipal Officials Association and also as a town supervisor, but for 2 different issues. As the President of WMOA, I am here to strongly object to the Governor's budget proposal to eliminate the AIM funding for municipalities. The importance of the work that municipalities do for the entire population of New York should not be forgotten, as we are create the shape of the quality of life and design a safe and comfortable environment. We all appreciate the incredible needs of education in our communities, but funding for education has gone up. It should go up, but funding for municipalities has not risen in 10 years, and now we're facing an actual loss of it. For the town of Mamaroneck, that would be $142,000 from our general fund. How do we make up that money? It's non-tax revenue. It would have to turn into tax revenue. The state asked us to live within a tax cap, which is counterintuitive to eliminating the aid to the municipalities. It is incredibly important and crucial for the municipalities. Lots of municipal mayors and supervisors gathered on Tuesday for a press conference. Every single one of them had another important note of how this AIM funding is crucial to municipalities. New hat. I'm now the supervisor of the town of Mamaroneck. And I want to talk about the plastic bag ban that is proposed in the governor's budget. It's fabulous that there is even a contemplation of this statewide legislation. However, Town of Mamaroneck has been working on this, creating this legislation for several years. We have done research, we have done interviews, we have collected data, and we know, all of us know, that you have to have a fee on a paper bag or reusable bags in order to make it work. Ban the plastic bags, but in order to make it work, you've got to have a fee, and Suffolk County has proven it. They've got a 5-cent fee on plastic and paper. They've seen an 80% reduction in the use of plastic bags. We are willing to help. We need this legislation strongly throughout the state. It should be uniform for everyone. We've got to save our planet. We've got to reduce our use of plastic. We've got to get it out of the trees and out of the water and get rid of it. Reusable bags work. Everyone can afford them because we're going to give them away for free. And you can eliminate SNAP people if that's one of the concerns. Thank you very much.
Joe Mayhew, Warren Rosenberg, I'm just giving advance notice, William Moldet.
Thanks for the opportunity to speak. As an educational advocacy organization, student advocacy is most focused on education and youth justice initiatives. First, we are encouraged by the governor's stated goal of ending the school-to-prison pipeline in New York State. We believe that one of the best ways to accomplish this is for both the legislature to pass and for the governor to sign the Judge Judith K. Safe and Supportive Schools Bill this session. This legislation will help local schools create fair and equitable discipline policies that will address racial disparities and disparities related to disabilities. It will remove zero-tolerance provisions and give local communities the ability to implement more successful and supportive approaches to behavior and discipline. For school districts with high suspension rates, the governor has proposed $3 million for support programs that train teachers and school leaders in alternatives to student suspension. While certainly a positive step, we believe that $50 million should be dedicated to support safe and healthy schools through needs-based grants to develop or expand school models, reduce disparities in school discipline, and provide a safe and supportive school climate. The governor has also proposed $1.5 million to create enhanced mental health and school climate grants to be used to provide wraparound mental health services. Again, we support the effort but feel that an allocation of at least $5 million should be made to begin to address student mental wellness needs and develop positive school climates. It is the responsibility of New York State to target state funding to the neediest school districts based on the amount calculated using the foundation aid formula. A recent Urban Institute report found that New York was the second most inequitable state nationally in funding between its districts. It is time for the governor to fully fund foundation aid according to the formula designed through a comprehensive costing out study undertaken by the State Board of Regents years ago. We cannot continue to deny students in high poverty areas access to the sound basic education to which they are legally entitled. Student advocacy works on behalf of hundreds of students who receive special education services. We want to make sure that the budget does not include allowing school districts to seek broad waivers from laws and regulations that provide important protections for students with disabilities. Thank you, Karen.
Time's short, so I'm going to talk fast, so hang on. My name is Joe Mayhew. I am the Secretary-Treasurer of the Communication Workers of America, Local 1103, AFL-CIO, and I want to thank all our senators for the opportunity to speak here today. There is a crisis of patient safety in our hospitals and nursing homes in New York State. This crisis is caused by understaffing, and the costs of understaffing to our community are just too high. Our families' lives are at stake, and we must act upon it. The acknowledgement of the governor's 2020 budget briefing book of the need of action on healthcare staffing is a significant step forward for New York State. However, the budget must include clear language empowering the Department of Health to regulate staffing and clear instructions to the DOH that a new staffing regulatory regime must be devised and implemented. We need unequivocal language laying out a path to safe staffing ratios to protect healthcare workers and patients. Patient safety cannot wait. Any study on the subject must examine how staffing ratios can be used to improve patient safety and quality of healthcare services, and consider the cost of chronic understaffing in acute and long-term care. As a union that represents 10,000 healthcare workers in New York State, we are hearing daily from our members about the impossible choices they have to make because they do not have enough staff to adequately care for their patients and residents. Staffing is a top issue of poor working conditions in our members year after year. Our members literally file hundreds of forms with management each year stating they are working in unsafe conditions that could jeopardize patient safety. While the geographic and size of those hospitals may vary, patients and types of floors do not. The needs of the patients that have gone through open heart surgery or pneumonia are no different from Buffalo to Manhattan. So the care for those patients receive shouldn't vary either. Even when the plans for staffing appear sufficient, facilities are consistently staffing below the stated goals. The result is intolerable cost to our state's patients, residents, and families. In addition to saving more lives and providing better care, hospitals could save money by adequately staffing. Understaffing is associated with the increase of many expensive problems. Patient falls, respiratory failure, cardiac, readmittance to a hospital 30 days after you've been released. These costs are incredible. Workers' compensation and high staff turnover are also expensive costs of understaffing for hospitals and nursing homes. It is therefore no surprise that hospitals' profit margins actually increased in California when they put in safe staffing ratios. The acknowledgement of the 2020 budget briefing book of the need of action around staffing is a significant step for New York State, and setting the actual ratios cannot wait. We need language in this budget that lays out clear pathway to minimum healthcare worker to patient ratios. I made it.
Can you talk faster?
More louder. Thank you for providing this opportunity to address you regarding the governor's proposed budget. And thank you for your continuing efforts in support of education, particularly higher education in all three sectors: public, private, not-for-profit, and proprietary. I'm here today as a representative of the College of Westchester, a proprietary sector college with a more than 100-year history of educating Westchester residents, where I serve as Provost and Vice President of Academic Affairs. The College of Westchester is a member of the New York State Association of Proprietary Colleges, the schools which collectively serve more than 35,000 New York State students and confer over 7,000 higher education degrees each year. As we've conveyed to the county executive and garnered his support, legislative leaders throughout the state, and to the governor's office directly, there is one particular aspect of the governor's proposed budget that, upon reasoned examination, unfairly strikes at the institutions that serve the state's most vulnerable college-going population, the very students for whom New York State and its lawmakers have fought so hard to expand opportunity and access to higher education. And by this I mean working single parents, women, minority group members, and veterans. And specifically, I'm referring to the governor's proposed For-Profit College Accountability Act. Under the rigorous standards established by the Federal Department of Education, the Middle States Commission on Higher Education, and the New York State Education Department, there already exists time-tested and broadly accepted mechanisms to ensure the quality of all accredited colleges and universities in the state. You should know that New York State's Education Department holds colleges and universities independent of sector to the same high standards of accountability and is regarded as among the most rigorous in the nation. And I encourage you to ask the state's Commissioner of Education to verify this for you directly. The flawed logic of the governor's proposed act will eliminate many of our colleges and drastically reduce access and choice that students need and want from accredited and already accountable proprietary sector colleges. Within your legislative districts, this will include the College of Westchester, Berkeley College, and Monroe College, putting at risk the very students that the students these colleges educate, the faculty and staff these colleges employ, the public school districts we serve through state-funded dual enrollment programs, and the municipalities that benefit from the taxes paid by these colleges. As career-focused colleges, this proposal would have lasting negative impact on New York State's workforce pipeline, particularly in the growing areas of healthcare, information technology, and hospitality services. Our students intern and/or are employed by companies large and small, including Montefiore System, Northwell Healthcare Systems, PepsiCo, ADP, and Verizon. On behalf of our colleges, the students we serve, and the employers who benefit from our graduates, I urge you to reject the governor's proposed for-profit College Accountability Act. Thank you.
After that is Leah Oken, Susan Abbott, Dee Ratsworthy, Peter Strativos, and Joel Jingle.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is William Millett. I'm joined by
William Smith.
We're from the Sickle Cell Awareness Foundation. We have an opportunity to reach out to our state senators and encourage support for sickle cell disease awareness, care, management, and outreach, which is greatly needed throughout areas in our state. I am from Queens. I work with one of our regional major, actually it's expanded all over several regions, healthcare providers for the last 25 years, providing genetic counseling for families that are affected with an impending pregnancy, as well as outreach and advocacy within the sickle cell community. I've served as an educator both to our professional colleagues, hosting symposiums and workshops, as well as for our individual communities, families, churches, schools, and so forth. This effort is greatly needed for sickle cell disease. Sickle cell disease is a genetic condition, something that is passed on from a state which is relatively benign. We call it sickle cell trait, where you have inherited genes which allow for you to survive the condition of malaria, preferentially over someone who does not have this sickle cell trait gene. But when you combine two parents together, each having this trait gene, there's now a 1 out of 4 chance that that child resulting from that pregnancy will be born with a lifelong, debilitating, painful disease condition called sickle cell disease. There are other genes that interrelate, and there is a broader gene disease conditions that results from those other genes as well. So it's not just one condition. It is a very complex disease condition. It is even more complicated to treat this disease condition because what it affects is the blood, and the blood has to go everywhere in the body. Now, the reason why we come before you is in 2011, Ms. Sotillo reached out and engaged the New York State Senate out of our district to create a bill to support sickle cell disease. That bill was asked for $1 million to put in statewide, a ridiculously low amount, but I was told at that time that was the highest amount we could even ask for. We are now in 2018. That bill has yet to pass through the New York State Senate. We need the New York State Senate to really have a heart for sickle cell disease. There are many professional and family colleagues that are trying to do the work grassroots and within hospital administrations, but it's a complex disease, it's an expensive disease. We in New York State have more than 10% of the country's population with sickle cell disease, and we are putting little or nothing in the tank to deal with it. Please support sickle cell disease. Thank you.
Okay, Leah Oken, Susan Abbott, Dee Ratsworthy, Joel Gingold.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and congratulations on all of your good work so far. My name is Leah Oken. I am the business representative for the Theatrical Wardrobe Union, Local 764 of the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees. Our local proudly represents workers who take care of costumes on live events as well as TV and film. I'm here today as a representative of my local and Yonkers resident to speak to you about the New York State Film and Television Tax Credit Program. This sheet, which includes the facts and figures in support of the incentive, was prepared with the help of 10 local and national unions and New York State AFL-CIO. These groups represent crafts such as designers, background actors, writers, editors, drivers, location managers, Brits, script supervisors, and of course wardrobe, all of whom would be deeply hurt by the failure to include the extension of the film and television tax credit in this year's state budget. The results of this program are impressive and an important part of the conversation. However, I would like to talk to you about the membership of Local 764 and their concerns about the incentives not being included in the budget. Our membership is over 70% women, includes people of many races and ethnicities across the gender spectrum, LGBTQ members, and actively working folks from the ages of 24 to 94. Sure. A few of them are actually here with me today, but luckily most of them are working right now. After the announcement that the budget would not include a line for the Film and Television Tax Credit Program, our members were crestfallen. You see, the work they do is inherently transient, and they knew instinctively what the impact of this decision would be on the industry. Some people, including some elected representatives, look at the studios that have been built, the businesses dedicated to the film industry, and the simple fact that we are New York, and think that there is no way this industry could move on. I implore you to believe that that is not true. It's actually something we're really good at in our industry. And as a native New Yorker, it always pains me to see Georgia standing in for Central Park. At a recent meeting, we heard from members, and they told us that some producers who are already filming projects in New York were actually looking for alternatives for the projects that are already ongoing. This instability is incredibly difficult for workers, the workers we represent. Their work is in New York. They've built their lives here. Their world is here. The thought of having to reevaluate and change their whole world, well, you can all imagine how you would feel. We have 80 members who call the districts you represent home. Scores more whose productions film in Westchester area and patronize local businesses. It is for these creative, skilled, hardworking, passionate, dedicated people that I implore you to make sure that the extension of the film and television tax credit is included in this year's budget. By doing so, you ensure these jobs and the investment in New York State will continue to bear fruit, not just for the workers on the film, but for the resources they use like hotels, restaurants, fabric stores, dry cleaners, button sellers, ribbon sellers, whatever. You can help us keep our world on its axis. Include an extension of the film and television tax credit program in this year's budget. Please vote yes this year and every year. Thank you for your time.
Dee Dee Raxworthy, Peter Strategos, Joel Gingold, Beth Finkel, Carol Flippinger, Abe Baker Butler, Madeline Zevon. I'm just going quickly.
Good afternoon. My name is Sue Abbott. I'm the Director of Grant Programs at Arts Westchester. On behalf of our CEO, Janet Langston, and our Board of Trustees, thank you for this opportunity to speak today. Many of you are familiar with Arts Westchester and the work that we do, but for others, Arts Westchester is a leadership and service organization whose mission is to ensure the availability, accessibility, and diversity of the arts. We endeavor to serve those that need it most. And one of the key components of those endeavors is arts education programs. We provide artist residencies at low-income senior residences, mental health outpatient sites, correctional facilities, homeless shelters, and after-school programs. Excuse me. We also have a significant presence in the Westchester school system. I want to take a moment to recognize Senator Mayer for her appointment as chair of the State Senate Education Committee. It is very appropriate that she was selected for this role, given her past efforts in leadership in advancing the arts and education in Westchester County. Senator Mayer, during her time as Assemblywoman representing the city of Yonkers, was instrumental in securing funding for Arts Westchester to implement an arts enrichment program in Yonkers elementary and high schools. The program ran between 2014 and 2016, engaging over 16,000 students and supporting artist residencies, art supplies for the classrooms, and funding for the students to attend cultural programs all over the county. The Yonkers program was a model for arts education initiatives and exposed students from kindergarten age through high school to dance, music, theater, and visual art. We will be providing you with copies of this printed presentation on the outcomes of the program, which unfortunately cannot continue after 2016 due to lack of funding. We believe that art and music are essential to a comprehensive education. It is regrettable that funding for arts and education is so scarce. And also regrettable that when programs are funded, the support is for only a short period of time and only for a small subset of the community. So the first point, Senator Mayor, please help us make your arts education model available to all children. As the dedicated Arts Council for Westchester County, Arts Westchester serves as a funder for artists and arts organizations in the lower Hudson Valley and beyond, awarding just over $1 million annually through county and state-supported initiatives, including NYSCA's decentralization grant for both Westchester and Rockland counties. Unfortunately, our budgets have been on a starvation diet, with local assistance through NYSCA at only $41 million for the entire state. At its highest level, the NYSCA local assistance budget was $54.3 million under Governor Mario Cuomo some 30 years ago. Point two, please add $10 million to NYSCA's local assistance budget and $10 million for capital projects. And finally, Arts Westchester needs your help. We have, over the last 20 years, built an art center in a historic building in the center of the county and spent more than $10 million in restoring and repurposing it. But the rain is coming in.
Thank you.
Dee Dee Waxworthy. Thank you. I'm here to showcase some of the work done by the New York State Tobacco Control Program, and we've seen a lot of good results in the last couple of years, and I want to thank the senators that are all here that know of our work, and Senator Biaggi, welcome. Look forward to meeting you. One thing to say, and then I'll introduce my colleague from the American Lung Association. We don't always see the smoking rates or the people who are smoking having the most difficult time to quit. And that's where our work in the health systems for tobacco-free New York, and also again Hudson Valley, is focused in on. So people who are suffering from mental illness, substance use disorders, or both, and also living in economically distressed areas are smoking at much higher rates. And we're seeing now a 25-year gap in longevity because of the highest smoking rate and those that are having the hardest time to quit. And because of their smoking, it is affecting their increase in chronic disease. So this work is being done in the state of New York, and we look forward to doing it in the future. Thank you.
My name is Elizabeth Cameron-Granger, and I'm the Director of Advocacy for the Lung Association of New York.
Maybe you should speak more into the mic. And
Sure.
You're still on the little 3-minute time.
Okay, I'll make it quick. So we support a lot of things in the governor's budget, which I might get to, but the one thing that's missing from the budget is right now, the tobacco control program that helps people stop smoking and raises awareness of the e-cigarette problem, that has been flat funded for quite a few years. So the CDC, recommends that that program be funded at $220 billion, and New York is funding it at $39,000. And New York brings in about $2 billion of tobacco tax money and the MSA, Master Settlement Agreement money, and we're not really sure where that money's going, but we feel like a slight increase of 50 would be nice for the year, and then slowly increment and bring it up, especially since the U.S. General Surgeon has called e-cigarette smoking an epidemic, because right now the increase from one year to the next of high schoolers smoking e-cigarettes is now at 78%, and most of those kids will go on to smoke regular cigarettes. That's it.
Strategos, Joel Dingle, Beth Finkel, Carol Flickinger, Abe Baker Butler, Natalie Zevon, Naomi Klein, Carissa Mazda.
Thank you. My name is Peter Strategos. My daughter Christine is 40 years old, suffers from IDD, that's intellectual and developmental disabilities and cerebral palsy. She resides in an OPWDD supported home and attends an OPWDD daycare program. Given her disabilities, I expect my daughter to be in the care of OPWDD for the next 35 to 40 years. I brought a picture of my daughter, Christine, here with her sister, Kate, at the Central Park Challenge. Her sister, Kate, is a child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist that works 2 days a week with New York Start. Last week, I had the opportunity to address the Westchester delegation of the Assembly, and I had two recommendations to make to the Assembly. Number one, that they put a hold on any further development of the transition plan for Medicaid from fee-for-service to managed care for a couple reasons, which I'll go into. Second, I suggested that long-term social services should always be under the care of OPWDD. We don't need any financial intermediaries in there taking a cut of the money when OPWDD has done an excellent job for years, rather decades, instead of years. I'm just going to go through quickly and identify some of the high points. My presentation today is based on our meeting with Paul Francis and Dr. Theodore Kastner, the new acting director of OPWDD. We think Dr. Kastner has an excellent medical background. Oh my, I'm never going to get there. And ready to lead OPWDD. The second, all right, very briefly, 2 points. Number one, the Medicaid rate for physician services has to be raised to be on par with the rate paid under Medicare, excuse me. Number two, there's great confusion amongst providers of what this transition involves. I was recently at a presentation where the leader of the, not the leader, but a high-sourced individual in my daughter's organization came and said, everyone here has to join mandatory care. There's no choice involved. And he's dead wrong. There have been 2 drafts of documents to be submitted to CMS. Both of them realize that there are a variety of parties, 4 parties that are specifically exempt from the mandatory care requirement. Okay, I'm sorry. I have provided with a copy of my full presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Beth Finkel, Carol Flickinger.
Hi, I'm Beth Finkel. I'm the state director for AARP New York. We have 2.6 million members in New York State, and in Westchester we have 150,000 members. And when I look out into the audience today, I'm thinking a lot of you might be our members, and I guess I'm partially here just to tell you why. We are working on a number of issues to help people age in place in New York. We hear a lot about the economy of New York. We hear a lot about people fleeing New York. And I think you all obviously love your communities and want to stay in your communities. And one of the things that AARP really works the strongest on is helping people stay in their communities. Here's just one quick factoid for you. 50+ New Yorkers contribute $700 billion with a B to the economy of New York State and their local economies. It makes up over 50% of the GDP. So when we're hearing about the constraints of the budget, currently in New York State, I think it's really important for us to focus on what older people contribute and why it's essential for government to help older people age in place and stay in New York. So we've got 4 issues for you. One is more money for home and community-based care. There are 2.6 million caregivers in New York State, and they contribute $32 billion of free care to their family members. And if you had to go pay for that in the open market, again, $32 billion, or those people have to go into institutional care, which we all know how much more that costs. So we need to get more money into homes and community services, your local senior centers, AAAs, et cetera, that can provide meals, transportation, et cetera. The next part is the caregiver tax credit. New Yorkers pay a huge amount of money out of pocket to keep their personal loved ones at home, to the tune of over $7,000 a year, and we need to figure out a tax credit to help them. Finally, we want to look at strong, healthy neighborhoods. You might know about Community First and the foreclosure issue around about legal services, $20 million that we absolutely need put back in the budget before March 31st, or all those legal services will go out and nobody will help people who are in foreclosure keep their homes. And finally, we need an independent utility consumer advocate. Right now, Public Service Commission decides whether there are rate increases for utilities, your gas, your electric, etc. There is not one person representing consumers on that panel, which is unconscionable. And on top of that, ratepayers pay for experts for the utility companies to find out how much more they should be charging. So we're paying them to make the case to raise our rates, and we can't catch a break because we have nobody at the table representing consumers. So, there you go. Thank you very much.
Sorry, I skipped Joel Beanville, that was my mistake. He pointed it out correctly. Thank you. I must say, as Joel's getting here, it's really remarkable and shows how much an appetite there is for public participation. Thank you all for being here.
So many issues, so little time. I'm Joel Gingold from Croton-on-Hudson. I represent no large organization. I'm just a humble constituent and taxpayer. I'd like to thank the senators for this opportunity to present my views and for pronouncing my name correctly, and congratulate you for all the work that you've done in the past month. It's very, very encouraging to see good things coming out of Albany once again. So I'd like to offer a few thoughts to help you keep up the good work. Number one, the New York Health Act. Mod 2 of the Act is due to be introduced on Monday. I strongly believe this is the responsibility of the legislature, and I urge you to remove the governor's proposed health commission from the budget. I fear that it will be used simply as an excuse not to take action. However, before that act is passed, please hold the necessary public hearings and do the research to fill in all the blanks that we saw in last year's act. The ACA was 2,700 pages when it was passed. The New York Health Act first version was 31 pages. Please consult with experts in healthcare and finance, consult with the stakeholders, doctors, patients, hospitals, drug companies, unions, employers, so on. And most importantly, if we are going to do this, consult with those governments who have been operating single-payer systems for years. Canadians, French, Swiss, and many other countries. They know what the problems are, and we can learn from them. We won't have to reinvent the wheel. This is an incredibly complex and difficult undertaking, and you should give it enough time to get it right. But please, don't delay. Number two, legal marijuana. I'm not sure if this is still in the budget, but there seems to be a great rush to get it done. Again, a very complex issue. Personally, I oppose passage, but I think the momentum is too strong to cut it off. The criminal justice aspects can be handled separately through decriminalization of possession. So please take enough time to examine all the aspects, all the potential problems, so we can draft a workable bill. Again, public hearings are essential to get this done.
Colorado has had legal marijuana for more than 5 years. California for more than a year. And both of them have had problems. According to reports, 80% of the marijuana sold in California during the first year was illegal, largely because the tax placed on it was too high. Your local dealer can sell it to you cheaper. So meet with Colorado, California, and maybe other states to craft a bill to ensure that all the known problems are addressed. Okay. Thank you.
Seth Burren is sorry he couldn't come and address it himself, our executive director. So I'm going to speak very briefly about 3 different issues that we would like to have you consider for refunding. The first is home care. The minimum wage is now it's going up to $15.22 an hour. The rates for the managed care organizations and managed long-term care organizations do not provide enough revenue for our home care program. The state needs to ensure there is adequate funding to meet wage requirements, especially the new minimum wage, so that we can continue to provide the services to needy Westchester residents. And the last thing about home care is that there needs to be more transparency about the use of the funds allocated for home care services, so that those that are actually providing the home care know how the dollars are used by the MCOs and the MLTCs. Then we'd like to talk a little bit about our SHINE program. It's our after-school program for students in grades kindergarten through 6th grade at the Yonkers Eugene Maria de Hostos Micro Society School. And it's an opportunity for these students for growth and development in the areas of homework assistance, tutoring, and mentoring. And it encourages children to participate in hands-on projects in science, technology, engineering, and math. And it also highlights the importance of nutritious snacks and physical recreation and social and emotional development. And then we want to talk a little bit about kinship. We're asking you to, again, add to the governor's budget of $338,000, which will fund 3 programs, to add an additional $1.9 million so that all programs in the state will be funded. That's the 22 programs. This does not even cover, it would cover half the state. And these programs help people who are raising grandchildren and other relative children do their job, because they do not get the kind of support that foster parents get. And I just wanted to introduce you very quickly to 2 people that are raising grandchildren. Sonia Elliott and Marcia Spencer.
Thank you so much. Take the bus move. Madeline.
So hello everyone. Honorable Leader Stewart-Cousins, Senators Mayor Biaggi, and Carlucci. Thank you for taking the time to hold this forum today to ensure voices of your constituents are heard in the state budget process. My name is Amy Baker Butler, and I am Vice President of the Westchester County Youth Board, as well as the Director of Legislative Advocacy and Expansion for Students Against Nicotine, a student-led nonprofit working to combat cigarette and e-cigarette use. Among teenagers, juuling, a form of e-cigarette use, has become much more prevalent and socially acceptable than use of traditional cigarettes, and has risen to alarming levels. Nationally, more than 37% of high school seniors used e-cigarettes in 2018, a tremendous jump from years past. Recently, Governor Cuomo announced his intention to include tobacco 21 in the state budget. However, while age restrictions are very important, they are not the full solution that our state desperately needs to combat teen nicotine use. Why? Because flavors are drawing teens to e-cigarettes. A main reason for the massive appeal of e-cigarettes among teenagers is flavoring. Each Juul e-cigarette pod comes in enticing flavors such as creme brulee, pink cucumber, or fruit nectar. I have some examples here that we can pass around. So to give Juul some credit, recently they changed the names of these products. They shortened them to creme, cucumber, and mint. Yet they still evoke imagery reminiscent of fresh fruit, verdant vegetables, and delectable desserts in a way clearly designed to attract teens. In fact, a review study conducted by researchers at the University of North Carolina found that tobacco products were more appealing to youth when they had pleasant flavors. Many teens, 81.5% of youth e-cigarette users, cite flavors as their main reason for using tobacco products. Such flavoring decreases perception of harmfulness among youth as well, with 63% of Juul e-cigarette users not even realizing that e-cigarettes contain nicotine. E-cigarettes can also cause a slew of serious and fatal medical conditions. As the Surgeon General has noted, the harmful chemicals in Juul can result in severe lung cancer, decreased immunity, inhibited brain development, and popcorn lung. In its single-minded pursuit of maximizing profits, Big Tobacco has used deceptive marketing, large-scale lobbying, and teen-friendly products to circumvent existing policies. This combination of tactics aggravates the need for anti-tobacco policies by increasing the likelihood that people will use life-threatening tobacco products. By regulating flavors and diminishing teen tobacco use, the state gains fiscally in the long term by minimizing healthcare costs to treat the effects of e-cigarette addiction, costs that are ultimately borne by taxpayers. For the sake of our youth, for our communities, and for our future, we must take action to restrict flavors, regulate e-cigarettes, and increase funding for prevention education to ensure that e-cigarettes never reach the mouths of minors. Now is the time for action. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Madeline Zevon. First, thank you. Your leadership is historic, improving the lives of millions of New Yorkers in January. Now, please fund these improvements to our health, safety, and ability to vote. Next, we ask for your continued support for the New York Health Act, the single-payer health care bill. The League of Women Voters has supported this bill for decades. Please hold hearings, make adjustments, bring it to a vote this spring, and change the national conversation to, we want what New York has. The bill will be reintroduced next week. It provides a more universal, more comprehensive, more affordable, and more fiscally conservative healthcare payment system than what we have now. I emphasize that this bill simplifies payments for healthcare. It doesn't change how healthcare is delivered. It will cover all essential healthcare more comprehensively than any current insurance in New York State, public or private, even more than Medicare. It will eliminate all financial obstacles to obtaining health care, obstacles that currently leave more than 10 million of us underinsured, delaying or foregoing critical care, struggling to pay medical bills, risking financial ruin and bankruptcy. New York Health will be fiscally more conservative than what we have now. Every study, left, right, and center, affirms that this single-payer plan will cost us less than our current system, control costs better, slowing skyrocketing healthcare increases, improve the health and productivity of our labor force, stimulate our economy to create 200,000 new jobs, and be business-friendly, attracting entrepreneurs and startups to New York State. Since this is a budget hearing, I offer two charts based on the RAND study and vetted by experts. Figure 1 shows how New York Health will save $11 billion despite additional costs, and Figure 2 shows how New York Health will be self-funding. Please note, both charts show savings despite adding substantial increases for long-term care at $18 billion. Long-term care will dramatically improve the lives of New York families, enhance New York State labor productivity, and keep skilled workers in the labor force. Also note, the New York Health will lower our property taxes. The pie chart shows county Medicare taxes subsumed in New York Health, but not the 10 to 25% healthcare savings for current and retired public employees in towns, schools, libraries, police. 10 to 25% of savings for local budgets. I'll just conclude with, I ask you to support New York Health so New York State will lead our nation to achieve a more financially stable system that is also a morally right system. Thank you.
So, Mazzeo, Sandra House, James Jenkins.
No, not me. Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Naomi Klein, and I'm the Director of Planning for the Westchester County Department of Public Works and Transportation. I'm representing County Executive George Latimer, and would like to speak with you about the need for additional state transportation operating assistance, known as STOA, for the Beeline bus system. The proposed 2020 executive budget includes a 7.2% increase for downstate non-MTA systems. Though this is a much welcomed increase over prior years, it's inadequate for the Beeline system if we're to maintain existing levels of bus service and serve emerging transit markets. In order to meet the needs of downstate non-MTA systems, a 10% increase is needed. The Beeline share of the request is approximately $5.7 million. As the second largest bus system in New York State in ridership after MTA and New York City Transit, the Beeline system carries approximately 27.3 million riders each year, or 90,000 each weekday. With 325 vehicles and 59 bus routes, the Beeline serves a wide market of users, providing express and local service and feeders to train stations and corporate parks. The system is truly regional in nature, as all New York City subway lines terminating in the Bronx are met by a Beeline bus. Westchester buses also serve Putnam County. The Beeline system is an economic engine for the county. Based on the department's comprehensive onboard passenger survey, most recently conducted in 2016, 67% of riders travel to or from work, and another 13% travel to or from school. 62% of riders are women, 45% are African American, and 38% are Hispanic. 51% of riders are transit dependent, which means that they do not have a car available for their use. In addition, 49% report having incomes less than $25,000 per year. Transit benefits the environment by providing an alternative to driving and reducing the number of cars on the road. The county's decision to replace 78 articulated buses with hybrid electric vehicles is expected to complete delivery in 2019. Will have a positive impact on air quality. Westchester has undertaken several initiatives to increase the efficiency of its bus service. Examples include the installation of transit signal priority in the Central Avenue corridor, which gives buses a time advantage over other traffic. We've also consolidated bus stops on two major east-west routes and added service in one of the busiest Beeline corridors from 242nd Street in the Bronx to Getty Square in Yonkers, in order to better serve a core market. We're looking to introduce all-electric vehicles into our fleet, and we'll be undertaking a bus redesign study to better meet the mobility needs of the county. In addition, I'd like to point out that Nassau County, despite having lower ridership than Westchester County, has historically received a greater amount of STOA than Westchester. Nassau received $69.3 million in the 2019 budget, compared to a significantly lower amount for Westchester of only $57.3 million. This glaring disparity must be addressed so that Westchester County can satisfy its transit needs and reduce the burden of funding the bus system that calls to its residents.
the Reality Check Manager for Parity Tobacco, a program of the American Lung Association. Reality Check is a program of the Bureau of Tobacco Control of New York State and promotes local changes to reduce the impact of tobacco use in local communities in order to reduce youth exposure, increase the availability of tobacco-free outdoor spaces, increase the availability of smoke-free multi-unit housing, especially public and affordable, and encourages smoke-free internet and movie policies. I'm here in particular to discuss the impact of youth tobacco usage. After years of downward trends, tobacco products amongst high school students in New York State, there's been a significant increase in e-cigarettes. According to the data from the New York State Tobacco Survey, in 2014 to 2018, electronic cigarette usage increased 160%. And for the first time since 2000, combustible cigarette use amongst youth has increased. In 2016, the teen smoking rate was 4.3%, and it has increased to 4.8%. While teen smoking rates for cigarettes is this 4.8%, youth usage of e-cigarettes is at 27.4%, and for any usage of any tobacco products at 30.5%. We may be asking why. New tobacco products being added to the market is one of the reasons. For example, e-cigarette companies are using big tobacco's tactics that are known to lead to youth smoking, including using candy-flavored products, as Abe discussed before, media placements, advertising, and celebrity endorsements. Here in New York State, the average age of new smoker is 13 years old. In addition to our youth, countless adults are being affected in our communities. While the adult smoking rate is 14.2%, we see disparities in vulnerable populations, including those with low income, poor mental health, and those with lower education. Each year, 28,200 New Yorkers die prematurely from tobacco-related illness, and 280,000 kids under the age of 18 living in New York State will die prematurely from smoking. Here in New York State, we've made great strides to stamp out teen smoking, but new products threaten to undo this progress due to the detriment of millions of Americans. Governor Cuomo's recent proposal is acting to combat e-cigarettes, which is a public health epidemic as declared by the Surgeon General. However, tobacco use continues to be the #1 preventable cause of death in the entire United States. It's hard to imagine a world without tobacco. For each of us have our own story how it's affected a loved one. For me, it's my father who at 68 years old has never successfully quit smoking. Last January, he suffered a brain aneurysm and was advised to quit smoking. That too has not been enough because tobacco is truly one of the most powerful addictions. I'm hoping that this next generation can be tobacco-free so that you do not have to bear the pain of seeing a loved one struggle with a product that, if it's used as intended, will kill you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sandra House, a resident of Yonkers. I'm standing on my toes. Thank you for your hard work, for your responsiveness to your electorate, and for this opportunity. Oh, okay. I am here in a totally unofficial capacity for another underserved and vulnerable population, and that's the animal population of New York State. I just want to make sure that there is funding, that there is legislation, that there is anti-cruelty support, that there are inspectors, that the farm animals are taken care of properly. That's really all I want to say, and I thank you for your responsibility.
Cheryl Brandon. Someone else, if you call your name. Yes, go ahead, Cheryl. Jenkins here? No, Cheryl Brandon, Jacqueline Baker, Sophia Wu, Ellen Hendry.
Good afternoon, Madam Majority Leader from the great city of Yonkers. It's my pleasure to be able to say that, and certainly to the esteemed education chair also from the great city of Yonkers, as well as certainly all of your colleagues. My name is Cheryl Brannon, and I have the great honor of serving as the founder and CEO of Sister to Sister International. This year, Sister to Sister International will celebrate 25 years of empowering women of African descent locally and globally. One of our main programs is a STEAM program, that's science, technology, engineering, arts, and math for Black and girls of color here in Westchester County. We have had tremendous impact over the years. How have we been able to do that? We've been able to do it partially through support from the state through member items. So I'm here this afternoon to certainly congratulate the leader and all of her colleagues on the great work that they've done in the fast way that they've certainly gotten out of the blocks. But I'm also here to state that, you know, it's great to have the governor's Regional Economic Development Council, but when it comes to those of us that are really putting our hands on programming and certainly ensuring that girls are getting a head start on math and science and knowing that they can be successful, particularly since STEAM jobs are growing twice as fast as non-STEAM jobs. So with that, I would say, again, I want to congratulate you and ask you if you give consideration to adding member items back into the formula, because again, they've been very impactful. Thank you.
Ellen Hendricks, Terry Kirshner, Marty Summer.
Good afternoon, Senators. I do want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. I'm also here to talk about sickle cell disease, and there's a lot of other patients and people from sickle cell disease community. Right? And I wanted to make other future comments. Sorry. I'm also a parent. I'm a parent advocate for sickle cell disease. I'm also a recent retired teacher from Yonkers Public Schools. And I partner with many sickle cell communities. I have two sons that have the disease. They're now 30 and 35 years old. But I partner with the sickle cell community in Queens, Brooklyn, and the Bronx. And I wanted to add to the comments about why sickle cell funding is so important, and it gets little or no funding at all. And it's because, like, and they're faced with lots of, so with funding that we, you know, that, and what the funding we're asking for is $5 million to have treatment, school quality care. We can develop programs for patients in sickle cell, so reduce the cost of Medicaid. Right now, it costs $15,000 to treat one per year. And with program, and they have time in the hospitals, because sometimes they stay for days, for weeks, for months. Like my son did, he stayed 3 weeks, but as a result of that, he lost his job, and he's a civil engineer. So that's what happens. If we can get funding and educate many medical people in the hospital so they don't have to face the emergency room horrors that they face with sickle cell, that they can resume their treatment at home so that they can hopefully go back to work, definitely keep their housing because that is lost a lot, and be able to take care of themselves at home. So it's very, you know, sickle cell disease is, like we said, is very debilitating, but it's a rare disease, but it's also a life-threatening disease. Whereas we have patients that the median span for males to live is 34 and females is 42 years old. So we're really asking that to please keep sickle cell in the forefront. Please give it the attention it deserves. We've been asking this for years. Please let it not be ignored. Because, you know, as we said, healthcare is a human right, and they have a right to live a quality life.
My name is Doc, very close to our community, and the funding is so important. Not only am I a patient with sickle cell disease, but I'm a doctor that sees patient dies. I've gone to over 14 funerals, like every so often of these patients. And even though we look good, I know we all look good because we all have sickle cell disease, we're hurting inside. And the problem, you can't see it, but we know that it's there. And so I want to let some of the other speakers speak because we really need the funding. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. All right. I just want to say it's everyone. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Ellen Hendricks, Terry Kirshner, Marty Summer, Michael Pierce, Jay Felch, Robert Handler, Michael Smith, Russell Kramer. There's one way to go.
Good afternoon, Senators and everyone. My name is Sophia Wu, a Yonkers resident since 1992. I volunteer in the schools for the last quarter century. I'm a homeowner that had 3 children that all attended Yonkers Public Schools. I'm here today on behalf of the 27,000 students in Yonkers who has no union to negotiate for them, to plead for your attention to inequality that Yonkers is almost every year. Yonkers is having a budget crisis, and people wondered why it kept happening. I was trying to figure out why and did my own research using Data USA. New York State formula placed Yonkers in the wealthy Westchester County. However, Westchester County's median household income is $89,709. New York State's median household income is $62,909, while Yonkers is $27,000 less than the Westchester average. And the poverty rate. Westchester has a total poverty personnel at 96,480 people, and Yonkers itself has 33,953. That means we occupy 35% of the poverty in Westchester. Did the foundation aid reflect this? Definitely not. Further, Yonkers City raised their sales tax to 8.875, while majority of the county remains at 7.375. Yonkers City sends sales tax, income tax, gambling money, including Empire City casino income, and local lotto income. I believe these add up to be $500 to $600 million each year. These amounts were more than many other cities and municipalities in New York. I would like to know, why was our share of foundation aid not increased with the money our city? Why does our students not get the proper share of foundation aid that reflects the money Yonkers send to the state? Do we not deserve these just Yonkers students? Yonkers population is almost 200,000, but homeownership is only 47.6%, and 46.4% speaks a non-English language. We desperately need assistance with ELL to bring our students up to par on English proficiency. Thank you for listening.
Hi, I'm Ellen Hendricks, and I'm speaking for Mary Jane Shinsky, a statement that she wrote. Thank you to the New York State Delegation, Majority Leader Stewart-Cousins, and Senators Shelley B, Alessandra Biaggi, Harckham. We all are aware Westchester County has made budget requests to the state delegation. I support those initiatives. At this hearing, however, I will concentrate on matters of broader import to our local governments. My focus will extend to 3 issues. First, the executive budget's exclusion of villages and towns from the AIM program if they receive less than 2% of their budget from this funding will create serious problems for many of our local governments. First of all, the timing of this loss of aid will create municipalities to balance this year's budgets, especially in light of the property tax cap and our municipalities' understanding that local property taxes must stay in check. Even more important, what may look like an unimportant sum of money to some can actually make a big difference to a local government. For example, loss of the approximately $70,000 in aid that 2 of my villages have received from the AIM program could make the difference between having a recreational person on staff or not, or the purchase of needed equipment or not, or meeting any one of many municipal functions our villages or town governments provide on a shoestring or not. This funding should be restored to the 2019 state budget. Second, everyone knows that our roads as a whole are in poor condition. Some have sought to single out the state for not taking care of its roads. Truth be told, like Route 9A desperately need attention, but then again, so do county roads, town roads, and village roads. And the problem will be even worse after this winter with the wild swings in temperature and freeze-thaw cycle. So I ask first that the state devote the resources needed for a more aggressive schedule for the repaving of state roads in our area, and second, that the state add more extreme weather funding to the CHIPS program. Third, one of the most cost-effective programs anywhere may be youth mental health first aid training. It is a national evidence-based curriculum that teaches adults who interface with young people how to recognize signs of childhood mental illness before situations spiral out of control and lead to illness. Training can be had for less than $50 per person. Imagine how intervention might have worked had it been tried before it was too late. I would urge that the state education budget include funding for otherwise require that this life-saving training be provided to teachers, coaches, and school staff. Again, thank you for this opportunity to provide input into the New York State budget.
Terry Kirshner, Marty Summer, Piers J. Phelps, Robert Amler, Michael Smith, Russell Kramer.
Good to see all of you again. Just want to bring attention to the fact that the governor has proposed that library aid be cut by over $4 million again, and that library construction aid be cut by more than $20 million. Clearly, we see that libraries are being used more and more every day. For example, for civic engagement. So we do hope that you understand that and support us. I also want to just highlight that the role of libraries has shifted. Clearly, we continue with the traditional sources and services such as literacy. But honestly, we are not direct service providers, but the work that we do really does promote the social service, programs throughout the county. At the Westchester Library System, we're active members of Nonprofit Westchester, Westchester Women's Agenda, and we work closely with the county to make sure that individuals understand the services that are available in their own communities, services that tax dollars are being used for, so that everything can be used for its greatest efficiency for all. So I know you're busy. I thank you for all you've done, and thank you.
We're Quintet. Just want to thank you for the opportunity to speak. We've submitted our testimony electronically, and you've already heard from school administrators, advocacy groups, and parents with regards to education and educational needs. Just highlight one or two things. The governor's budget overall for the school districts will increase by $32 million. That's a 4% increase. The foundation aid only increases by $7 million, 1.5%, which is not even keep up with inflation. What we are asking for is that you provide an additional $2.2 billion in state aid for 2019-2020. $1.3 billion to meet increased need and to set the stage for fully funding foundation aid over the next 3 years. $400 million to fully fund expense-based reimbursement, $500 million in targeted funds to strengthen student support, increase opportunities, and improve school safety. In addition to that, as has been mentioned before, foundation aid, which has been frozen since 2008, the formula needs to be reevaluated, update the costing out study to determine appropriate foundation amounts per pupil, update student need factors, and update and restructure the regional cost index. So with that, with the very brief remaining time, my colleagues would like to.
Hi, Karen D'Amato. I am first and foremost a teacher of 36 years at Mount Vernon, a graduate of Yonkers Public Schools, and president of the Mount Vernon Federation of Teachers. But more importantly, I'm also a NYS lobbyist, and I've been doing this for a lot of years, and I have to say the story seems to remain the same. We're still talking about the foundation aid formula, And I want to just tell you, because I know how difficult it is for you to do your jobs, I just want to educate you a little bit on the impact this budget would have on us. I need to tell you that the expense-based aid gives us the computer technology, which, by the way, we're going to need to take these new state exams that are computer-based. It gives us the textbooks that we obviously need and our students are sharing at this time. And in order for us to keep up with our charter school expenses. In Mount Vernon alone, we have close to 400 students who are charter school students, which means we have to pay a tuition out of our own base, which means $7.5 million of Mount Vernon's budget alone. And that's for schools that are in charter, I mean, that are in Yonkers and the Bronx as well. Tax cap, I know you guys feel you have to make it permanent. We have respect, we have done what we have to do to communicate and educate our community. We have given them zeros. But now, obviously, the 60% majority give us a chance to at least educate and see if that's what our constituents want. Thank you.
You'll have the money.
Thank you.
Got it. The last one. Pierce, I believe, Jay Pelch, Robert Hamler, Michael Smith, Russell Kramer, Anthony Calavito, Sarah Campbell, Judy Page, Dwight Arthur, Barbara Finkelstein, Robert Keston, Dimitri DeFeo, Diana Aparicio. Sorry, go ahead.
It's okay. Thank you, everyone. I'm actually here on behalf of Legislator Kit Kovo, who is a county legislator for District 2. She represents Mount Kisco, the town of Bedford, the town of Lewisboro, Cambridge, North Salem, and a sliver of Somers. So first off, thank you to all of you for everything you're doing, for listening to us today, for everyone who has spoken and everyone who is still waiting to speak. I would like to speak to 3 issues relating to the budget today: amendments to the Family Court Act, the plastic bag ban, and repaving I-684 in the towns of Bedford and Lewisboro. The proposed budget amends the Family Court Act and defunds placement and remand for many of the very vulnerable KINS population. We believe that this proposed Family Court Act amendment should be reviewed very carefully, as it appears to eliminate family court judges' discretion for youth in need of residential treatment. We are very supportive of the proposal to ban plastic bags, as we know that any plastic we eliminate from the waste stream is helpful. In New York State alone, we use 23 billion plastic bags annually. Those bags are filling our oceans, clogging our streams and stormwater systems, appearing in microparticles within our food chain, and apparently in our digestive tracts, and now are becoming increasingly unrecyclable. I commend the state in committing to tackling this problem. However, New York State's law needs additional provisions. The city of Chicago passed a plastic bag ban similar to this, and within months of the law's enactment, their waste system was overrun with reusable bags, which were being treated by consumers as single-use bags. The costs were enormous to businesses and to the city, and the environment was harmed, not helped. Chicago repealed that law and replaced it with one which put a minimum fee on bags, including paper bags. Immediately, the city noted a significant reduction in use of paper and a concomitant change to reusable bags. Research has shown that a plastic bag ban without a fee for the alternative of the paper bag does not incentivize people to change their habits, which must ultimately be the goal of any proposed law. Repaving of I-684 near the Sawmill Interchange is long overdue for anyone who has driven there. We know this. We have been notified by our local ambulance corps and fire departments that the area surrounding I-684 and the Sawmill Parkway Interchange is the most dangerous section of I-684. Our ambulance corps reported 45 multi-vehicle accidents in September and October of 2018 alone. That's more than one a day. While many factors increase the incidences of accidents in this area, our first responders tell us that the greatest contributor is the extreme deterioration of the interchange itself. We have been additionally notified in writing that the current road service is putting our first responders at risk, causing injuries and damage to gear as well as to the apparatus paid for by our communities. These risks delay response time, putting the lives of the many accident victims at increased risk. It is our understanding that there are plans for eventual redesign of the roadway. However, the increasingly uneven, potholed, and deteriorated road surface is entirely too dangerous to be left. So please, repaving in the interim. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jay Coates, and I'm the General Counsel and Senior Vice President of Government Relations, Food Industry Alliance of New York. FIA is a nonprofit trade association that advocates on behalf of grocery, drug, and convenience stores throughout New York. Being a good corporate citizen is very important to FIA and its members. That is one reason that in 2014 and 2015, FIA's members recycled an average of approximately 8,386 tons of commingled plastic bags from throughout the year. Consistent with its ongoing efforts to support sustainability, FIA opposes plastic bag bans because they harm rather than protect the environment. We believe that a no-ban fee law modeled on Suffolk County's plastic bag law is the policy option that best serves the interests of businesses, consumers, and the environment. Ironically, plastic bag bans harm rather than protect the environment. This is because ban jurisdictions typically experience a surge in paper bag distribution compared to pre-ban levels, even when a fee is charged for paper bags after implementation of the ban. For example, after plastic bags were prohibited in the town of Newcastle, paper bag distribution sharply increased to approximately 12,000 bags a week, even though each bag cost a dime at a grocery store in Millwood. This is far more than a number of paper bags that would be distributed for free at the Millwood store if plastic bags were not banned. For example, from January through September of 2017, before the Suffolk law became effective, an average of approximately 1,200 paper bags per week were distributed for free at 9 independent grocery stores in Suffolk. In 2018, after the Suffolk law became effective, an average of just 707 paper bags per week were sold for a nickel per bag at the 9 Suffolk stores. It's not only a 40% reduction in average weekly paper bags distributed at the 9 Suffolk stores, it's also significantly lower than the approximately 12,000 paper bags per week sold at the Millwood store, even though paper bags in Suffolk are available at half the cost. This is because the absence of plastic bags at the Millwood store is causing many customers to use paper bags, with the resulting reduction in reusable bag use. Extrapolating the numbers statewide suggests that a plastic bag ban will ultimately result in a plastic bag problem being replaced with a much bigger paper bag problem. Recognizing that consensus legislation would produce far better results for businesses, consumers, and the environment, a no-ban fee law was enacted in Suffolk after its sponsor abandoned a ban bill it had introduced. Rather than banning the distribution of plastic bags, the law mandates a fee of at least a nickel per plastic and paper bag. The collaboration facilitated by this consensus approach has been striking. Environmentalists, county officials, organized labor, and FIA are cooperating in the implementation of the law through a working group that has met regularly since 2017. Our survey data reveals impressive results. As you see on page 3 of my testimony, that the reduction of plastic and paper quarter by quarter has been 74% at the bottom and 83.6% at the top. And the fourth quarter numbers are comparable. FIA, on behalf of its members, has requested that the Cuomo administration replace the proposed ban on thin film plastic bags with no ban fee provisions modeled on Suffolk's plastic bag law. The bag fee proceeds can be divided among retailers and the Environmental Protection Fund. We respectfully request that the members of the Westchester Delegation join us in a collaborative effort to incorporate such changes into the executive budget.
Russell, Kramer, Anthony Palladino, Sarah Campbell, Bruce Page, Dwight Northey, Barbara Pinkerton, Robert Jeffrey,
Good afternoon, Honorable Senate Leader Stewart-Cousins and Honorable Senators. I'm Dr. Robert Amler. Many of you know me. I am a Vice President and Dean at New York Medical College, one of our country's oldest and largest private medical schools and Westchester's only medical schools. At New York Medical College, we are very excited about the new opportunities looming in New York under your leadership. Like you, we have long pushed for improvements in access to quality health care, healthier communities, and diversity in the health professions. And with you, we've been out there bringing economic development in the biotechnology space, disaster preparedness, clinical skills that coincidentally bring healthier life, longer life, and better quality of life for all. Today, we are running several bold new initiatives, opening New York's first new dental school in nearly 50 years, launching BioInc, the region's only biotech incubator, and securing Mid-Hudson's only NYSTAR Center of Excellence, which is also New York's only such center focused on healthcare and a vital security need, advanced preparedness for natural and man-made disasters that can take down communities. Yesterday, we submitted our ZCAP application to expand Bio Inc. That's the hugely successful affiliate biotech incubator. Bio Inc. has been a huge success by all measures. Its earliest conception in 2010 in partnership with the major biotech firms in the region and our former senator, Stewart-Cousins. Our own multi-million-dollar investment restored a campus building from decaying condition to LEED silver status. Our initial build-up, which brought 10 startup lab spaces and shared support facilities. Designation as an innovation hotspot, New York incubator and startup New York site. And now, a thriving bioscience ecosystem that has been cited many times as a priority project by the Mid-Hudson REDC. Now, Bio Inc. has sustained year-over-year success in attracting and retaining biomedical startups and has demonstrated its unique ability to promote creative collaboration between business and academia. The incubator is 98% occupied. It houses and supports biomedical startups that employ about 50 people in high-paying STEM jobs. Mere capacity sounds great, but it also signifies an unmet need for even more startup space. We are now turning away far too many startups for lack of wet labs, research space, and collaborative meeting. So we're asking HECAP for $500,000, which we will match 3-to-1. Overall, a $2 million project creating nearly 10,000 square feet of new bio-wing space, 100 more scientists, innovators, and entrepreneurs, and we ask for your support. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Good to see my friends. Welcome. Thank you. Thank you for your time. I am Michael Smith, president of Berkeley College, and I was also a former Westchester County legislator. And having having you folks sit here in a room that may be a little bit hot, and having been in the place you were, sitting with Peter at times, sometimes at 1 in the morning, listening to it, these folks deserve a lot of appreciation. With that being said, I know your work. I'm familiar with all of you. You understand who my school is. Some of you have had parents that come to my school. You know my students. You know who they are. Berkeley College has been in the community for 88 years. I know you understand economic development. I know you believe in doing the right thing. I come to you today asking for no money. What I am asking for is for you to reject the for-profit College Accountability Act. It is targeting our sector. We have 35,000 students out of 1.2 million students enrolled in New York State. It represents 3% of the population, and this targeted will realistically, place our schools out of business. And in Westchester County, we're talking about the College of Westchester, we're talking about Berkeley College, we're talking about Monroe College. We have been in existence for 88 years. We have over 60,000 graduates. Our graduates are working in the marketplace. The marketplace is telling us that we are providing an effective education. As Provost from Warren spoke about from College of Westchester, we are accredited under the same standards as every other fine institution in the state of New York. The requirements for NYU, for Columbia, for Fordham, for Iona, are the same exact standards that we need to meet as being regionally accredited. We need to be regionally accredited in order to receive funds for our students. So the standards are there, we're being measured, and we have these new proposed regulations that will put us out of business. And that's not right. We have always said in our sector that we will subject ourselves to any regulation that every other school is targeted to. The one proposed regulations out there, without getting into the details, only 6 schools out of 150 colleges in New York State could meet that. But effectively, it's being applied to one sector only. We appreciate your support, students. We know you understand the importance of economic development. Berkeley College ranks 9th out of 150 colleges in the state of New York in income mobility, moving our students 2 or more quintiles, as reported by the New York Times. We're doing real things. We're taking underrepresented students and making the changes in their life. We appreciate your support. We appreciate your consideration for doing the right thing. Thank you for everything.
Anthony Calabito. I just would say the library does close at 5:30. I realize that everyone will not get a chance. You will get a chance to submit your testimony by email. Right, we'll keep going until the last possible minute. Okay, sorry.
Thank you. My name is Russell Kamer, and I am a clinical associate professor of medicine at Dr. Amler's Medical School up the road. But more important than that, I'm a practicing primary care physician. When I started practicing 30 years ago in Westchester, there was no such thing as OxyContin. There was no opioid epidemic as we know it, though there was plenty of opioid problems in the UK. What happened? Well, it was not just a large, greedy drug company. There were a lot of well-intentioned, well-meaning people who decided we should prescribe more narcotics. And they had good reasons. They wanted to relieve suffering, wanted to relieve the suffering of cancer patients. Even the state legislature joined in by passing laws to make it easier for doctors to prescribe narcotics. And it was fair. When I started, we had too much suffering. But things didn't work out too well. Things went out of control. And I fear that today we're going down the same path. We have another large industry, the cannabis industry. It's actually big tobacco 2.0. Literally. Philip Morris, or Altria, the parent of Philip Morris, has bought up marijuana. They've bought a large share of Juul, which we heard about earlier today, with their tactics. So put the two together. They have the marijuana company, they have the Juul company. What do you think they're going to do? And you know their tactics. But again, it's not just the people who are looking to make profit. They're well-intentioned people. I just don't want us to make this well-intentioned people, for many good reasons, want to legalize them. Let's not make the same mistake twice. Let's look at Colorado. Pueblo, Colorado. My colleagues in the emergency room there tell me they see cases every day of people coming in with THC illness, and it's THC illness. It's not leaf marijuana, what some of us may think of the Woodstock era. This is concentrated waxes, oils, 100% THC. These are dangerous narcotics. Every day they have cannabis-induced psychosis. They have diseases that did not exist when I was in medical school. They didn't exist. Cannabis hyperemesis syndrome. That means a vomiting disorder. They see cases every day. It's very severe. It will put a strain on the system. If you want to legalize marijuana in the budget, write it and read it. Thank you.
Thank you, fellow Supervisor of Westchester, Sarah Campbell, for your case by Arthur and Robert Kent.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for doing this. I applaud you for spending the time here. As supervisor of the town of Eastchester, I'm not here to ask for anything more. I just don't want you to take away what you're giving us. Presently, the town of Eastchester receives $181,000 in AIM aid, and that presently is scheduled to be cut from the budget. $181,000 in our town is a 1% tax increase right off the bat. So the 2% tax cap, we're not looking at a lot of obligation there, or growth. I was also advised that some towns are not going to have their aid taken away. And I think we're being punished because we are prudent and we are cautious and careful with our spending. And we raised taxes when it wasn't easy, and we took our lumps when we made cuts. It seems like we're being punished for being fiscally responsible. We've consolidated departments and positions. We have shared services. We jointly purchase everything with any neighbor that'll do so. We've reduced our staff by 25%. We have a good Moody's rating, and we've never once avoided the tax cap. We don't go crying in Albany every year, asking for our fair share. We provide it for ourselves. But part of what makes that up is this $181,000. Heaven knows the town of Eastchester taxpayers send a lot more than $181,000 to Albany. You know, when it came to getting money from Albany, for years we received very little. I mean, it took me 10 years to get White Plains Road paid. Part of it we did because it was so bad. It looked like downtown Beirut. It was like bombs going off. It was terrible. We had to pay it. Also, I ask you, urge you, when you do special laws, like the laws pertaining to SALT, or the executive orders that come from the governor, ask him to open up his checkbook. For example, on the furlough, this is a brief example, we're all for that. But, all the money that we're not getting from the furloughed employees, a little under $1 million, we still have to, by law, remit on our tax levy to the school district. So I don't have use of those money. I gotta go and borrow money now. And I gotta pay interest on that money. So it's a great idea, but it needs to come with a check. Just like the salting that we did. It cost us $25,000 to figure it out correctly, and we did. But, it'd be nice to get a little bit of aid, a little bit of reimbursement. But I just ask you lastly, just to please consider not removing that from this budget. Thank you very much.
Okay, Sarah Campbell, Julia Pace, White Arthur, Barbara Finkelstein, Robert Keston, Dimitri DeFeo, Diana Ambrosio, Lou Boucher, Julie Killian, Jesse Urelli, Deanna Leone, Nicola Coddington. That is the next page, just as shown.
Hi there, I'm Sarah Campbell, I'm from Croton-on-Hudson, and after the 2016 election, in Croton-on-Hudson, a few of my friends got together and formed an indivisible group. And we worked very hard to elect all of you, to get rid of the IBC, to pass the wonderful legislation you've passed, and now we're thinking how we're going to fund it. And so my big focus here is early voting and the electronic poll books. And I know that Cuomo is only putting like $7 million or something in the budget, and the estimate by the Board of Elections is like 50 to 85 million for the electronic poll books. The problem is, if we don't get this right, we'll either have an unfunded mandate or we'll have a system that doesn't work. And then everybody who didn't want early voting is going to be jumping down our necks and say, see what a fiasco this is. So I just want to make sure that you guys make early voting work. Thanks.
Julie Case, Dwight Arthur, Barbara Finkelstein, Robert Kester.
Hi, I'm Dwight Arthur. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and thank you for the great way you started the year-breaking legislative logic. I'm here to talk about healthcare. New Yorkers are passionate about healthcare. Even those among us who feel secure in their healthcare, everyone has a family member, a friend, a neighbor, or a colleague who feels that their healthcare is under pressure financially or by regulation, legislation, or litigation. The governor's made it clear that his preferred approach is to wait and hope that the same people in Washington who are tearing down our healthcare system will miraculously turn around and build it back up again. To that end, his budget proposal, as well as the Senate and Assembly proposals, include the Governor's Commission on Universal Health Care. The commission would be 100% comprised of political appointees selected by the governor, making it all but inevitable that the commission will eventually endorse the governor's wait and hope approach. The commission will release its report not to the public, not even to the legislature, but to the governor, who has a history of burying commission reports. And to top it off, the governor's budget explicitly calls on the commission to find a way to strengthen commercial health care insurance in New York State, which takes away any possibility that the commission will actually engage with the key issue of whether commercial insurance is part of the solution or whether commercial insurance is contributing to the severity of the problem. Honorable Senators, we don't need this commission. It's counterproductive. It's a waste of valuable time. It's a waste of taxpayers' funds. I call on you to totally remove the Governor's Commission on Universal Health Care from the budget and to direct your energy instead to consideration of the New York Health Act.
That's okay. Honorable legislators, thank you for having this forum. We are here today as members of the Homeless Are People Too Committee of Community Voices Heard. Our committee is a group of mostly homeless and formerly homeless Westchester residents. We are pushing for a better shelter system and more housing we can truly afford. Our county has one of the highest numbers of homeless New Yorkers outside of the city. That number has went up by 37% since 2010. Our family shelters are so crowded that last year the county had to ask a White Plains church for extra room for families with children to stay overnight. Oasis is a drop-in shelter in New Rochelle for single adults. Every night it runs out of room to set up the army cots on which people sleep. So every night, around 20 people have to sleep sitting up in hard plastic chairs. Our committee is putting together our own report on homelessness. Last year, we took a survey with over 100 homeless people and asked them about their stories and struggles. When asked what the biggest barrier they faced to finding a home was, 77% of respondents said a lack of housing they could afford. People who get disability or retirement benefits cannot afford to live in Westchester. Many people who work cannot afford to live in Westchester. As a result, people get stuck in our drop-in and shelter systems, some for years. Westchester does have state and federally funded supportive housing programs for homeless people, but there are never enough of these vouchers, and not everyone who needs housing needs supportive housing. People who get public assistance theoretically have another option, a shelter allowance. But in Westchester, the amount of a shelter allowance is $677 for a single person, not even enough for most rooms. We strongly support the concept of home stability support, a proposal introduced by Assemblyman Andrew Hevesy. This would commit the state to adding funding to shelter allowances, creating a voucher that would pay up to 85% of the market rent, or in Westchester, $1,243 a month for a single person. It would get people a lot closer to home. We do feel that the idea of home stability support needs to be expanded before it is put into place. Right now, it would only be available to people in public assistance. In Westchester, a single person stops being eligible for public assistance if they're making over $800 a month. Any very low-income person should be eligible for this solution. Home stability support should also have no set time limit, otherwise we run the risk of the people it helps winding back up where they started. Thank you.
Homeless people in Westchester also.
That's fine, but I appreciate it.
We're going to submit.
Barbara?
Yeah.
Barbara Finkelstein, Robert Teshman,
Wait,
Sale.
this Diana Aparicio.
Excuse me?
I'm sorry, you called.
Called Dwight, I'm sorry, Dwight Martha.
You spoke.
You already spoke here. Okay, so I have Barbara Finkelstein next. Robert Teshman, Lisa Sale, Diana Aparicio.
Okay.
Shay.
Okay, I'll go as fast as I can so you can get
No,
you
that's
can get
okay.
your turn. Thank you very much for holding this forum, and thank all of you, every single one of you at the table, for supporting legal services of the Hudson Valley and free civil legal services. So I'm here to talk about free civil legal services, which no one has talked about, but I feel so fortunate to be talking after community voice is heard, because one of the issues I really want to talk about is the crisis in housing in Westchester County and the need for funding for eviction prevention. So I'm Barbara Finkelstein, CEO of Legal Services of the Hudson Valley. We're the only provider of free civil legal services to poor and low-income individuals, families, vulnerable individuals in the 7 counties, including Westchester County. We have nowhere to send people since we are the only provider, and most of the people who spoke today send people to us, and we're happy to have you send clients to us, but we really do need funding. So I'm here to talk about 5 issues. I do have a handout for all of the senators, so I'm only going to be able to touch on 1 or 2, but the 5 are, we're asking for funding to create $400,000 to create the Westchester Housing and Kinship Caregiver Legal Services Project for Westchester County. Restoration of funding for civil legal services through the Legal Services Assistance Fund in the amount of $2,830. Preservation of a $70,000 grant to serve domestic violence victims in Rockland and Senator Carlucci's district, which he has secured for us for 3 years and supports 160 victims of domestic violence who desperately need legal services. And statewide funding in the amount of $20 million in the Community's First project, which is for legal services and housing counselors to prevent foreclosure, and disability advocacy project. So in my 1 minute, I want to talk about the need, the crisis in housing in Westchester County. As you just heard, the shelters are full. There's no place for families to go. Legal Services is the only provider in all the different housing and civil courts for families facing eviction. We prevented 838 evictions last year, saving the county $20 million because it's $78,000. for each family, you know, to be in a shelter a year. There are almost 12,000 eviction petitions in Westchester County, just in the cities. There's 36 county village courts. We don't know how many eviction petitions are in those courts. Most of the evictions are in Westchester, are in Yonkers, then Mount Vernon, then New Rochelle and Peekskill. And so we desperately need this funding to be able to prevent evictions for people in housing they can afford. So we are representing people in subsidized housing, Section 8, and these are affordable apartments that people desperately need to stay in. So I hope you'll be able to support that funding. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Robert Keston. I want to thank Pete Harckham for suggesting that this is the people's budget. And so I hope that what you heard here today will be reflected in that budget when we get to read it later on in the year. It was interesting that out of the things talked about today, the New York Medical Center, sickle cell, addiction, mental health, developmental disability, senior care, long-term care, and all would all be covered under the New York Health Act. So we could save a lot of time and a lot of effort if the three of you who have already endorsed and co-sponsored that legislation, and I believe the rest of you who are new, the two of you who are new, have already agreed to co-sponsor, that this should be a done deal and we can move on worrying about people getting the health care they need in New York State and once again be a leader in this country rather than falling way and way behind. To cut back, we could eliminate members' items. They've done it at the federal level because they knew it led to corruption, and we can certainly do it at the state level and save millions of dollars that can go into other things. Whatever you do in members' items should be in the budget, itemized and seen and approved by both the legislature and the public. It also wouldn't be bad for you as elected officials to look at your health care now and in the future being tied to universal health care for every New Yorker. There is no reason for you to get what we can't get, and there's certainly no reason for your part-time workers to be able to get what New Yorkers can't get. If you want New Yorkers to have health care, then every New Yorker should have health care, not elected officials alone. Another big issue, the governor doesn't want a team looking over his shoulder. He has said that he will go to war if you guys start to investigate him. Well, it's time that the Assembly and the Senate set up some kind of a Moreland Commission and clean up New York State. For far too long, this has been a corrupt state. You have the power and the authority and the people behind you to clean it up, and you should do it, and you should do it now. It's wonderful that you passed all the things that you passed, but tax reform, health care, and cleaning up government are the heavy lifts, and you really need to get on that. If we learned nothing at all from President Obama, we learned that you take on the big issues first, otherwise you will never get done. You have an opportunity still with only 60 or 50-something days left of sessions, many of them tied up with the budget, to get some of the really tough stuff done. I hope that you do it, and then we'll come back to this room in a year from now and be able to say congratulations on a job well done. Thank you.
I just want to say that the library director has allowed us to go to 5:30, although we were supposed to close at 5:15. That means 15 minutes is all we have left, and then everyone will have to exit through the side door. So be realistic. If you're at the very end of signing up today, we're not going to get to you. We are going to get your email testimony. Just letting you know, and thank you to the library, which made a change in their plans to accommodate.
Okay, Demetra, DeFeo, Diana Aparicio, Lucia Shea, Killian, I don't know what we do after that.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Demetra DeFeo. This is my daughter Sophia. She's going to be born tomorrow. Thank you. I was born with sickle cell disease. I'm Caucasian, obviously, and I'm from Greece. My parents are from Greece. My mom was born in the Bronx. I was born in the Bronx, and they had no clue that they both carried the trait. And the Department of Health sent them a letter a month after I was born and said, "Your son has sickle cell." And they said, "Well, first of all, we have a daughter. This can't be right, and she's not black. So how is this possible?" And sure, I was checked, and that's the case. I've been living with this chronic disability illness whatever you want to call it, debilitating for my whole life, and now I'm 33 with a girl here, and I want to stay alive for her. And I've gotten multiple transfusions, blood transfusions, infusions, and I've stayed in the hospital many times, missing a lot of school, missing a lot of activities. I prayed that I could have a daughter and rear a child and breastfeed and all that stuff, and I got there. And now the case is that there's no funding for sickle cell, and especially in Westchester, there's a lack. I live in the Marinette, which is close to White Plains Hospital. The White Plains Hospital didn't do me good because I had a 30-day hospital stay, and it was terrible. I don't want to have to go, I'd always go down to Montefiore Einstein in the Bronx for my care, and I appreciate something closer to home, some support closer to home. Just so I can stay here for Sophia. That's not my home.
Diana?
Oh, yes. Okay. Good afternoon.
I am not Diana Aparicio, but she is. And we've decided to merge our testimony together because we're all speaking about the same thing.
Thank you.
You have a blue folder from us, which includes our testimony, which I'm about to cut in half. And it also includes a tremendous amount of background information about geriatric mental health, which is the topic we're here to talk about. I'm the voluntary chair of the Geriatric Mental Health Alliance of New York. With me is Lisa First, the director of the Alliance, Diana Aparicio, who is the co-chair of the Westchester equivalent. It's the Westchester Geriatric Mental Health Collaborative. Together we represent 2,500 individual members and over 20 organizations which have also signed on to this. We're here to say today that funding is needed for geriatric mental health in New York State, and to urge you to do one thing: support adding $2 million to the New York State budget to increase funding for the Geriatric Mental Health and Chemical Dependency Demonstration Grants Program. This program, operated by the New York State Office of Mental Health, has not had an increase in over a decade, despite its documented success in developing self-sustaining behavioral health services for older New Yorkers. There is an opportunity now to establish new demonstration projects to help older adults with serious behavioral health problems to age in the community, to age in place. This is critical for New York State's efforts to achieve long-term care reform. That is, to decrease the reliance on very expensive and often undesirable institutional services. We have given you a lot more detailed information. You are pressed for time. We'd be delighted to meet with you at another time to brief you further. Thank you.
We appreciate Julie Killian.
Senators, how are you? Thank you for having this forum. It's a pleasure to be here. And I'm here on behalf of the New York Police Fire Retirees Association. I represent over 1,500 members. I also sit on the executive board for the Westchester Department of Labor Body, which represents 92,000 members. I'm here to oppose the cuts to retiree health insurance. The Senate bill is 1505, the Assembly bill is 82005. These proposals have been repeatedly rejected by the legislature as they are unfair increase in cost for those who can least afford it. These proposals follow health insurance increases already put in place for retirees over the past several years. The vast majority of retired state and local government employees live on a modest and fixed income. Changes like this proposal can result in financial instability, in some cases, poverty. This organization not only urges the legislature to reject both of these proposals, but we urge passage of legislation that would protect all public sector employees when they retire, and to continue that forever. I appreciate your attendance and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Killian and Jesse. Jesse and Beata, if you're both on the same topic, maybe you could do it as one. My dad's a retired fire chief.
My name is Julie Killian, and I'm the co-founder of RIE Action for Children and Teens, a federally funded local anti-drug coalition, a former local elected official, and most importantly, the mother of 5 children. This budget would legalize marijuana. This is a public health and safety issue and should be outside the budget. Proponents of legalization are ignoring the proven science, experiences of other states, environmental impacts, advice of doctors, first responders, and substance abuse professionals. Governor Cuomo insisted until recently, quote, "It's a gateway drug and marijuana leads to other drugs," and there's a lot of proof that that's true. Data I heard at a conference this week with 3,000 other prevention leaders confirms it. Any treatment provider you ask will tell you 99% of patients start with marijuana. We can likely agree that New York needs to stop the disproportionate impact of illegal marijuana on minority and low-income communities. Decriminalization is the answer, not legalization. The facts show African Americans are twice as likely to be arrested for marijuana in Colorado and Washington following legalization, partly because the black market doesn't go away. No state has seen a reduction in prison population due to legalization. In Denver, 364 pot shops outnumber 111 McDonald's and Starbucks combined that are clustered in minority neighborhoods, much as liquor stores are. Youth marijuana use continues to be high in states that have legalized. A NYS report shows Colorado is #1 in the country for first-time pot use, and an NIH survey from 2018 found vaping of nicotine and marijuana up significantly. Woodstock weed was 1 to 2% THC. Today's weed is routinely 20 to 40%. Potency for edibles and hash oil, which is used in vaping, can reach up to 99%. Numerous studies showing the negative effects of THC on the brain have been done with low levels of THC. None have been done with a higher potency. How do we protect our communities from drug driving? No tests exist to adequately identify THC levels to determine impairment. According to the Government Highway Safety Association, marijuana is the most common drug found in fatally injured drivers, and marijuana presence has increased substantially in the past decade. California's pot-related tax revenue missed projections by more than 50%. A recent study out of Colorado found that for every $1 tax revenue received from marijuana, $4.50 must be spent to mitigate the negative effects. Car insurance premiums in states that have legalized have gone up 10% in the first year, 16% in the second year. That will hurt our low-income communities. All of you would soon vote to approve commercialization of pot. Doing so would go against the recommendations of the New York State PTA, the medical societies, county health officials, law enforcement, and the Westchester County Chiefs Association, and hundreds of thousands of your constituents. A recent poll shows that support is down and people want to decriminalize. Our state would be the first to commercialize through legislative action, not public referendum. It will be on you when expectations, whether it's social justice, economic opportunity, or tax revenues, don't become reality. By legalizing, we're telling our children this drug is safe. Rushing this through is a bad idea. One last thing, heroin and opioids are getting all the headlines because that's what's killing our kids, but alcohol and marijuana are the killer of dreams. Thank you.
Jesse and together quickly, and we'll try to get to Nick. Otherwise, library district.
Thank you. My name is Jess Vecchiarelli, and I'm here to talk about Ossining School District's Foundation Aid funding. I'm a parent of two children that attend Ossining Public Schools, and I'm the director of Ossining for Fair Funding, a community advocacy group with over 700 members. I would like to thank you for this opportunity. Ossining schools are one of the most underfunded school districts in all of New York State, projected to receive 40% funding in Governor Cuomo's projected budget. That's the average foundation aid school is 80% funded. This is a formula that was frozen a decade ago and still hurts Ossinings. What happened since then is that Ossinings received a swell of 1,000 students since the freeze. That's nearly the same amount as the entire Elmsford school district. So Ossining took on a district-sized amount of students. Mind you, this is at the same time as neighboring school districts like Briarcliff are receiving 114% of their foundation aid funding. Madam Majority Leader Senator Andrea Stewart-Cousins, I'm just like you. When your children entered the public school system, you advocated to fix a right that they were not given access to. You fought to end segregation in Yonkers schools. I too am fighting for the right to a fair education. This is a civil rights issue. Our majority school district has become lost in cracks of policy. When funding is scarce, opportunities dwindle, doors close for ever-changing pathways for children. All children, regardless of zip code, should have the same educational opportunities. This comes down to money. 100 teachers have been cut. 4-year-olds are taking hour-long bus rides home. Teachers are teaching on stages and closets because of limited space. With a $4.5 million deficit, I fear what's next. I'm very concerned over chatter in social media this week that funding relief will be prioritized for the Long Island schools whose seats were recently flipped Democratic. I beg you, please do not punish the students of Ossining. They have already been victims of politics for too long, and it needs to end this year. Our community is changing as a result. We are at a breaking point. Dollars should follow students. This is educational racism, and it needs to end. Do not forget your Westchester constituents. Thank you.
And you can also submit written testimony at the desk, and if you leave, I just want to make sure to thank Juliana, Eliza, and I of my staff who did a ton of work.
Thank you.
One more, we're not going to stop.
Thank you, because nobody else has brought up this topic. I'm with Citizens for Voting Integrity, and I'm here to ask that as you work on this budget, you keep in mind the need for election security, because our democracy depends on it. For example, last month, you all passed Senate Bill 1102, providing for early voting. Congratulations and thank you. But making it easier for the people of New York to cast a vote won't matter if we can't guarantee the security of the vote count. That means that the paper ballots we vote on and the optical scanners which count them, which are vulnerable to malfunction and hacking, must be kept secure during the entire process, including the early voting period, which you have courageously added. That means the county boards of elections that administer those elections must receive the additional funding they need for security. That includes physical custody as well as cyber security. As you work through this budget and plan for future ones, please prioritize and encourage your colleagues who are not here to prioritize election security, because without it, we can't trust that we have an actual functioning representative democracy. Thank you.